Hi there, I'm Austill. I'm an encaustic painter. I've been painting most of my life, painted on plaster for about 25 years and been doing encaustic painting for about 10. The ancient Egyptians invented encaustic painting, and they used beeswax and seawater and soda, minerals from the earth and pigment, and made a wax paint medium that melts at a much higher level than if it was just beeswax. So instead of melting at 140 Fahrenheit, it'll melt at 200 Fahrenheit. And I should say, that being said, encaustic medium does melt. So if you leave it in your hot car or you put it on a wall where the sun shines on it, it is possible to have it melt. And they don't like to be frozen either. But in general, they will last for eons. Many of the pieces that the Egyptians created actually are still fine today. So I'll tell you a little bit about how the wax is made. The bees create honeycombs made of wax to hold their honey and to hold their eggs and little forming bees. And thank goodness for the bees. They're unbelievably important to our whole food chain, and many things. They're dying off rapidly at this point in time due to climate change, industrial agriculture, and pesticides. I'm grateful for the beekeepers who, let's see, where's my sample of my wax? What did I do? Oh, here. Okay, so what I do is I take wax from local beekeepers, and I also mix it with wax from art supply places that have naturally bleached the wax, because this yellow will create, a brown if you're making a purple, or a green if you're making a blue. So I like to lighten it up with bleached wax. So I melt these together, and then I take damar, which is a tree sap from India or East Asia, and I melt all of this together. I better do about 4 cups of this to about a cup of the damar, and then I filter it after it's all melted. This is a colander with a special cloth to filter all the fly wings and all the good stuff that bees have as part of their wax mixture. So that makes encaustic medium, and then all you have to do is mix in pure dry pigment. The same stuff that's in all paint is pigment, brown stuff of the earth. They're also making synthetic colors these days, but it's pure dry pigment that I add to the melted clear wax. Yeah, so over here I have 3 pancake griddles full of wax that I've created, colored wax, and then I also make larger hunks of wax for larger paintings. And usually when I'm painting, I create a flat surface to start with, so that I can dig back to lower levels and have something consistent underneath. So you warm the surface, because it's very important that the wax fuse both to the initial layer and then to every layer afterwards. Otherwise, if it gets cold or hot, it could crack apart, and we don't want that happening. So I warm the surface, and then put on a layer. I think I fell in love with wax when I was little, and we did these things with wax paper and cut up crayons and leaves in autumn, and we ironed them together, and it would do this really beautiful color thing. And I realized when I fell in love with encaustic painting, that was I think an early connection to my love of wax. So let's see. So one way to make a color other than adding dry pigment, very important, one thing I forgot to tell you is, this is actually the wrong respirator, but you absolutely must wear a respirator when you're putting the dry pigment into the clear wax to make your color. The dust from the ground stuff of the earth can be very not good for your lungs, and its ventilation is also very crucial. So I've got a fan blowing the fumes away from me as I'm working. The damar creates fumes, and also the pigments create fumes. So yes, so let's see. So you can take, let's see, a little bit of a light, or maybe I'll do something you can see better. Take a pink and then fuse it. You gotta fuse, and then you can see it spreads out. Which a lot of things happen that you're like, oh, I didn't quite mean that to happen, and you actually have to pay attention to that and go with it. It's also possible to have quite a bit of control, but it's a dance. It's really a dance, and so you can make a bit of a kind of a gray by overlapping with the pink, or you can have a much brighter green by just going over the white. I would never dare to paint, or I shouldn't say never, at this moment in my life, to paint in front of an audience is not something I can do. But this is a little bit of how it happens. You can also build up layers, and then I take an X-Acto blade, a hot X-Acto blade, and you can scrape back down to a color below, which I find to be fascinating and part of what I do. So let's see. I think that's about it. Thanks for listening.